Welcome back. This is your last video on the legislative branch. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. Today we want to focus on how bills become laws, and that is a 10-step process, just to forewarn you. Before we get to the actual process, I want to talk to you about two different types of bills that Congress passes. Congress can either pass a private bill or a public bill, and a private bill is just like its name sounds. A private bill is one that affects a certain group of people or a specific individual or a specific place. A public bill obviously will affect the general public, and most of the time Congress will pass a public bill, okay? Congress also has the authority to pass three different types of resolutions. Congress can pass a simple resolution, which does not have the weight of law and only affects one house of Congress. I would write that down if I were you. A joint resolution is one that can have the force of law, and it passes both houses of Congress. This is how Congress proposes amendments to the Constitution. Congress can also pass a concurrent resolution, and a concurrent resolution is one that does not have the weight of law, and it only affects both houses of Congress. So earlier this year, when Congress convened on January 5th and not on January 3rd, like the Constitution says they're supposed to, Congress had already passed a concurrent resolution that allowed them to take those extra 2 days off, or January 6th, I think it was, anyway. So when I say that they don't have or they do have the weight of law, that means that they can be enforced as a law would, okay? A rider bill. Now, oftentimes in order to get a bill passed, congressmen often have to add a lot of stuff to the bill that may or may not necessarily relate to the bill itself. So a rider bill is a small, maybe not as popular bill that is attached to the major bill, kind of like as an amendment to the bill. And when that major bill passes, the rider bill passes with it. So if you have a small bill that you don't think has a really good chance of passing through the entire House or the entire Senate, then you can add it as an amendment to that major bill. And when the major bill passes, the rider bill passes with it. So sometimes bills they're said to resemble Christmas trees, okay? And that's why there's a picture of a Christmas tree over here. The Christmas tree itself, in this analogy, would represent the major bill. And then all of the ornaments and all of the decorations that go on it would represent the rider bills that are attached to it. Next, here's the actual bill process. And I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, so please make sure that you're pausing me as you need to. Step one is the introduction of new bills. Now, we get ideas from new bills from a variety of sources. Private citizens like you and I, if we would contact our congressman and say, hey, I've got an idea for a bill. Interest groups. And we've talked about interest groups before. These are groups of people that have a common interest, and they try to persuade members of Congress to vote a certain way. And then also the executive branch. The president can be a great source of new ideas for Congress. Bills, it's important to remember, can only be introduced by a member of Congress. So whenever, if I have an idea for a bill, I can't just walk into the Senate and say, hey, this is what we're going to discuss. I have to contact my representatives. Bills have sponsors and co-sponsors, and the bill's sponsor is the person that had the idea originally, and co-sponsors are people that attach their name to the bill, basically showing their support for that specific congressman or that bill idea. And then the bill has to go through the House and Senate procedures after it's been created. In the House of Representatives, the bill goes into the hopper. The House, the leader of the House then recognizes the bill and distributes it to committees. In the Senate, the person can present a bill just by being recognized by the presiding officer. And then they're given a House and a Senate number, and then they get really into the meat of the process. The bills will spend most of their time in committees. Okay, and we've talked about the importance of committees before. These are smaller groups of congressmen that organize to accomplish a specific task. Committees receive the new bills. The chairperson of that bill would then send the bill to a subcommittee. And we said a subcommittee was a smaller committee that deals with a specific issue of a major committee. Once the subcommittees get the bill, they have three options. They can either pigeonhole the bill, which means to just let it sit there indefinitely until it dies. They can accept the bill, which means they approve it, and then they would send it back out of the committee, or they can kill the bill. And if they decide to kill the bill, that bill dies in committees and it doesn't go any further. Sometimes committees will hold what they call committee hearings. A committee hearing, it's not a court like a court's meeting, but it sounds like it. A committee hearing is when congressmen gather witnesses or experts on the issue to discuss the concept that is addressed in the bill. So, for example, if there's a bill that wants to increase teacher salary to $100,000 a year by federal law, experts on the subject would be teachers, administrators, people that work within the school system, government officials, celebrities. If you tie a celebrity to your bill, then you're probably going to draw a lot of interest to that bill, which could hopefully positively advance your bill. Committee hearings, the point of this is to allow congressmen to gather more information about a bill, and they also want to become experts on that subject. They can also bring publicity to the issues that bills deal with. Next, we have markup sessions. A markup session is the time when congressmen can actually make changes to a bill. So anytime that they want to mark up the bill, they meet in a markup session. Once they've met in the markup session, they move on to reporting or killing the bill. Now, reporting the bill, if they like it, then they send it to the entire House or the entire Senate to be voted on. If they don't like it, then they kill the bill. In addition to the bill itself, the committees attach what's called a committee report, and that includes everything that the committee did. So it describes, it would provide like the minutes of the committee hearings. It would describe the bill in detail. It would list any changes that were made to the bill. It also gives the opinion of the committee on that bill. Step 6, debating and amending. Especially in the House of Representatives, few lawmakers actually debate on the floor. Okay, now in the Senate, we would have lots more discussion on the actual floor of the Senate. But in the House, most of that discussion is done in committees. At this time, they can amend the bill. They can add major changes, like they can totally change the content of the bill with the approval that's requisite. They can adjust, like make changes, typos, that kind of stuff, because you don't want to send a bill to the president that is full of typos. Sometimes these amendments that they add are added to slow the progress of the bill, because every time you add an amendment, you have to get approval of the House or the Senate in order for it to be added. Amendments are only added if the majority of the House and the Senate approve them. Okay, so that's one way that you could slow the progression of the bill. Step 7 is voting on the bills. Now, once the bill comes out of committee, like I said, it's proposed in front of the entire House or the entire Senate. In order for a bill to be discussed, a quorum has to be achieved, and a quorum is the minimum number of people that must be present for official business to occur. Passage of a bill requires a majority in most situations. The congressmen have 3 different voting options when it comes to voting on the bill. They can vote yay, nay, or present. And if they vote yay, then they're voting in favor of the bill. If they vote nay, they're voting against the bill. And if they vote present, then that means that they are basically saying that they're there and they're there to help achieve a quorum, but they don't really care about the issue of the bill. The House and the Senate must pass identical forms of the bill for the bill to become a law. Now, I know that you guys can remember this from watching the Schoolhouse Rock video. Once the House of Representatives passes the bill has to go on to the Senate. The Senate goes through the same process. And if the Senate makes any changes to the bill, then that bill would either have to go to the House of Representatives and go through that exact same process again, or, which is what normally happens, we meet in a conference committee. Okay, and we talked about conference committees last chapter. A conference committee is a group of people who are called to compromise on parts of bills. Most of the time, the people that are included in these conference committees are committee members who originally passed the bill because they're seen as being the experts on that subject. The product of the conference committee is called the conference report, and that includes all the changes that were made to the bill. Okay. Step 9 is presidential action. Step 9, the president either has the option to sign the bill into law, he can veto the bill, or he can use his pocket veto power. If the president vetoes his bill, then the bill goes back to the House of Congress in which it originated, and they have to go through the whole process again. They can either redraw the bill itself, or they can vote to override the president's veto, which I'll get to in a second. If the president decides to use his pocket veto power, he can only do that in a few situations. Basically, Congress has to have presented a bill to him within the last 10 days of a legislative session in order for him to use his pocket veto power. And if he uses his pocket veto power, Congress cannot vote to override his veto. And we'll see examples of that in class. Step 10, the Congressional Override. This is one step that does not have to happen. In order to override a president's veto, you have to have 2/3 of a vote in each house of Congress. And that is a lot of people that have to get together to basically oppose the president's wishes. This allows the bill to become law without the president's signature. And it happens very rarely simply because it requires so many people to vote in favor of it. Okay, so those are the 10 steps in the bill to law process. Please make sure that you have been taking notes on your Google Doc and also answering the embedded questions in Edpuzzle. If you have questions, ask in class.